They found the drawings under her bed 3 months after I brought her home. Charcoal sketches, dozens of them, each one showing me dying in a different way. Drowning in the bathtub with my hands pressed against the porcelain, fingers scraped raw from trying to climb out. Falling down the stairs with my neck bent at an angle that made my stomach turn just looking at it. Choking at the dinner table, my face purple and swollen, eyes bulging like something from a nightmare. And the worst part, the part that made my hands shake so badly I nearly dropped the entire portfolio, was that each drawing was dated for the future. Specific dates written in Emma's careful, precise handwriting in the top right corner of every single page. Today's date is on one of them, November 30th. I'm looking at it right now as I sit in my kitchen at 2 in the morning, and I can't stop shaking, because in this picture, I'm standing exactly where I'm standing right now, in front of the sink with the window behind me. And there's something behind me in the reflection of that window. Something with fingers that have too many joints, too many knuckles, reaching for my throat with a patience that suggests it's been waiting for this moment for a very, very long time. I adopted Emma from St. Catherine's Orphanage 6 months ago. I was 38 years old, single, and so tired of coming home every evening to a house that echoed with everything I'd lost. My sister died 2 years before that. Cancer. The aggressive kind that doesn't care how young you are or how much you have left to live for. She was 35 when it took her, and I watched her fade over the course of 8 months, from a vibrant woman who ran marathons and painted murals on the weekends, to someone who could barely lift her head from the pillow. Near the end, when the morphine made her words slur together and her eyes couldn't quite focus anymore, she grabbed my hand with what little strength she had left and made me promise something. "Live," she whispered, her voice like dried leaves scraping against pavement. "Promise me you'll really live, not just exist. Don't let my death make you a ghost." I promised. I meant it with every fiber of my being. I held her hand until it went cold, and then I went home to my empty house and tried to figure out what living actually meant when the person who taught you how to do it was gone. Adopting Emma felt like keeping that promise. It felt like opening myself up to life again, letting something new and hopeful into all those empty spaces grief had carved into me. I researched for months, attended information sessions, filled out endless paperwork. The process was supposed to take over a year, but St. Catherine's expedited everything. I should have wondered why. I should have asked more questions. But I was so desperate to feel something other than loss that I ignored every red flag waving in my face. The orphanage was one of those old Gothic revival buildings that looked like it belonged in a Bronte novel, all dark stone and pointed arches and windows that seemed to watch you. It sat on the edge of town, surrounded by empty fields, isolated in a way that felt deliberate. Sister Margaret, the head administrator, was in her 60s, with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, and eyes that were kind in a way that felt practiced, rehearsed, like she'd learned to mimic compassion without actually feeling it. Emma was 7 years old, with dark hair that fell in waves around her pale face and eyes so blue they looked almost gray in certain light. She barely spoke during our first 3 meetings, just sat in the visiting room with her hands folded in her lap and watched me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. But there was something in her face, some desperate need that I recognized because I saw it in my own mirror every morning. I thought we could heal each other. I thought I was saving her from a childhood of institutional walls and rotating caretakers. God. I was so catastrophically wrong about everything. Sister Margaret seemed almost eager to finalize the adoption, pushing through paperwork that should have taken weeks in a matter of days. Emma needs stability, she told me during our last meeting, her hand resting on the little girl's shoulder in a way that made Emma flinch almost imperceptibly. She needs someone who understands loss. You're perfect for her. The way she said perfect should have warned me. It wasn't a compliment. It was an assessment. The first month was normal, or at least what I imagined normal would be for a traumatized child adjusting to a new home. Emma was quiet, obedient almost to a fault. She'd sit at the kitchen table doing her homework with perfect posture, her pencil moving across the page in careful, controlled strokes. She ate whatever I made without complaint, even vegetables most kids would revolt against. She went to bed exactly at 8:30 every single night without being told, like she had some internal clock that governed her every movement. She never asked for toys or treats or special privileges, never threw tantrums or tested boundaries, never even raised her voice above a whisper. My friends who had kids said I was lucky. Just wait until she gets comfortable, they joked over coffee, while their own children ran screaming through playgrounds. Then the real kid will come out. The tantrums, the attitude, all of it. But something about Emma's stillness bothered me in a way I couldn't articulate. Children aren't supposed to be that controlled, that careful. It was like she was afraid of taking up too much space in the world. Like she was trying to make herself as small and unnoticeable as possible. At night, I'd lie in bed and listen to her moving around in her room. Soft footsteps crossing the floor. The creak of her desk chair. Sometimes I'd hear her talking. Just a low murmur of words I couldn't quite make out. I told myself she was probably just talking to stuffed animals or working through her feelings out loud. Kids did that, right? Processed their trauma through play and imagination. I didn't want to be an overbearing parent who monitored every moment. So I gave her privacy and space and tried to ignore the way my instincts screamed that something was wrong. The drawing started around week 5. I found the first one on the kitchen counter one morning, a sketch of our house done in pencil. It was remarkably good. The kind of detailed architectural rendering that seemed impossible for a 7-year-old. The perspective was mathematically perfect. Every window in exactly the right place. Even the crack in the front step that I'd been meaning to fix captured with precise accuracy. I praised her for it, asked if she'd like proper art supplies. She just nodded once, that slight incline of her head that was her version of enthusiasm, and returned to her cereal. That weekend, I took her to the art store and let her pick out whatever she wanted. She moved through the aisles with purpose, selecting charcoal sticks, sketch pads, blending stumps, fixative spray. Her choices were specific, professional, like she'd done this 1,000 times before. The cashier commented on her good taste. "You've got a little artist here," he said, smiling. Emma didn't smile back. She just stared at him until he looked away uncomfortably and rang up our purchases. That night, I heard her moving around upstairs, the soft scratch of charcoal on paper continuing well past midnight, past 1, past 2 in the morning. I should have checked on her. I should have asked what she was drawing in the dark. But I was so relieved she'd found something she cared about, some outlet for whatever was going on inside that carefully controlled exterior, that I let it continue. I let a lot of things continue that I shouldn't have. The nightmares began in month 2. Right around the time Emma had been with me for 8 weeks, I'd wake up gasping, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape my chest, absolutely certain that someone was in the room with me. The dreams were always the same, with that repetitive quality that nightmares have when your subconscious is trying to tell you something your conscious mind refuses to acknowledge. I was drowning in black water, not regular water, but something thicker, more viscous, like oil, but somehow alive. It was cold in a way that went beyond temperature, cold in a way that made my bones ache and my teeth chatter. Something was wrapped around my ankles, something that felt like fingers, but wrong, with too many joints that bent in directions that violated every law of anatomy. It would pull me down into depths that had no bottom, and I'd see lights above me, distorted and unreachable through the murky water. And I'd try to scream, but the black liquid would fill my mouth, my throat, my lungs, my entire being, until there was nothing left of me but terror and darkness and the absolute certainty that I was going to die alone and forgotten in this impossible place. I'd wake up with my sheets soaked in sweat, my throat raw like I really had been screaming, my heart rate so elevated I'd feel dizzy. And every single time, I'd look down the hallway and see Emma's door closed, not even a sliver of light beneath it. No sound coming from her room. Not even breathing. The silence from her room was absolute, like a void. I started keeping a glass of water on my nightstand, telling myself the nightmares were just stress, just my mind processing the enormous life change of becoming a parent. But they got worse. More vivid. More real. I'd wake up tasting that black water. I'd find bruises on my ankles in the exact places where the dream fingers had gripped me. Once, I woke up with my fingernails torn and bleeding, like I really had been clawing at something trying to escape. One night, around 3 in the morning, I woke up from the drowning dream, and she was standing at the foot of my bed. Just standing there in her white nightgown that looked gray in the darkness. Her face completely expressionless, her eyes reflecting the moonlight coming through my window in a way that didn't look quite human. The reflection was wrong, like her eyes were made of something other than normal biological tissue. I nearly screamed, barely managing to swallow the sound before it escaped. "Emma?" My voice cracked and broke, making me sound like a scared child myself. "Sweetie, what's wrong? Did you have a bad dream?" She didn't respond for a long moment, just kept staring at me with that unblinking intensity that made every hair on my body stand on end. Then, in a voice that didn't sound quite like hers, it was too flat, too emotionless, like someone reading words off a card without understanding their meaning. She said, "You were making noises? Scared noises. I wanted to see if you were dying." The casual way she said it, like she was commenting on the weather, made my blood turn to ice water in my veins. "I had a nightmare," I told her, trying to keep my voice steady and calm and failing miserably. "I'm okay now. You should go back to bed. School in the morning." She tilted her head to the side, studying me like I was a specimen under glass, like she was taking mental notes for some future reference. "Do you dream about dying?" The question hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. "What? No, Emma, that's not something you should worry about. Everyone has bad dreams sometimes. Doesn't mean anything." "Everyone dies," she said flatly, like she was reciting a fact from a textbook. "I just wondered if you knew how, if you'd seen it yet." Before I could respond, before I could even process what she had just said, She turned and walked back to her room, her bare feet making absolutely no sound on the hardwood floor. I lay awake until sunrise, staring at my ceiling, trying to convince myself that she was just a traumatized child saying strange things, that I was reading too much into it. The incidents escalated after that night. Small things at first, easy to explain away individually, but forming a pattern that terrified me when I looked at them collectively. I'd find my medications moved, bottles that I'd left on the bathroom counter now arranged on the edge of the sink, lids unscrewed just enough that one wrong move would send pills scattering everywhere. The smoke detector batteries would be removed, the little compartments hanging open, and when I asked Emma about it, she'd say she didn't know how that happened. Knives would be left out on the kitchen counter overnight, points facing outward at exactly throat height for someone my size. Once, I slipped on the stairs because someone had spilled water on the steps, just enough to make them slick and dangerous. I caught myself on the railing, my heart pounding, and looked up to see Emma watching from the top of the stairs with that blank expression that told me absolutely nothing. "Did you spill something on the stairs?" I asked, trying to keep the accusation out of my voice. "I don't know," she said. Her default response to every question, delivered in that emotionless monotone that made me want to scream. My friends started to notice that something was wrong. I tried to hide it, tried to maintain the facade that everything was fine, that adoption was wonderful and fulfilling, and exactly what I needed. But Sarah, who'd known me since college, cornered me at a coffee shop one afternoon. "You look exhausted," she said bluntly, "like you haven't slept in weeks. Is Emma okay? Are you okay?" I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to pour out all my fears and suspicions and ask her if I was going crazy. But how do you explain that you're afraid of a 7-year-old child? How do you articulate the feeling that something is fundamentally wrong without sounding paranoid and unfit to be a parent? "It's just an adjustment," I said, stirring my coffee with mechanical precision. "She's been through a lot. We're both figuring things out." "Maybe she needs therapy," Sarah suggested gently, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "Trauma from the orphanage. Someone who specializes in helping kids process difficult backgrounds." I scheduled appointments with 3 different child psychologists over the next month. Emma sat through each session in complete silence, answering their careful questions with single words when she answered at all. "Do you like your new home, Emma?" "Yes." "Do you feel safe there?" "Yes." "Do you have bad dreams?" "No." She was polite, compliant, and gave them absolutely nothing to work with. Every therapist said essentially the same thing. She needed time, patience, consistency. She was dealing with attachment issues from institutional living. Her flat affect and controlled behavior were defense mechanisms. With enough love and stability, she'd open up. None of them saw what I saw in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. That calculating coldness, like she was running calculations, measuring variables, planning something I couldn't begin to understand. Month 3 was when everything came apart. When I found the drawings and understood that I hadn't adopted a child at all. I'd invited something else entirely into my home, and it had been patient and methodical and very, very good at pretending. I was looking for a library book Emma had borrowed, one of those illustrated fairy tale collections that was probably somewhere in her room. It was overdue, and I didn't want to pay another late fee. I knocked on her door, got no answer. She was at school, and went in. Her room was impeccably clean as always. Everything in its place with geometric precision. Bed made with hospital corners. Books arranged by height on her shelf. Desk clear except for a lamp and a cup of pens. I checked her desk drawers, her bookshelf, even looked in her closet. Nothing. Then I knelt down to check under the bed, and that's when I saw it. A large black portfolio folder shoved all the way against the wall. The kind professional artists use. I didn't remember buying it for her. My hands shook as I pulled it out, some primal part of my brain already screaming at me to leave it alone, to shove it back and pretend I'd never seen it. But I couldn't. I had to know. The first drawing made my blood turn to ice water. It was me, rendered in charcoal with disturbing accuracy. Every detail of my face captured perfectly. But I wasn't standing or sitting or doing anything normal. I was lying at the bottom of our staircase, my body twisted and broken, my neck bent at an angle that was clearly, obviously fatal. My eyes were open and empty, staring at nothing. And in the top right corner, in Emma's careful handwriting, was a date. October 3rd. That was 2 months ago. That was the day after I'd slipped on the wet stairs. The day I caught myself on the railing. The day I almost fell, but didn't. I saw through the portfolio with mounting horror, my breath coming in short gasps that didn't seem to bring in enough oxygen. Page after page of death. Me, drowning in the bathtub. My hands pressed against the porcelain, water spilling over the edges onto the floor. The date was October 10th. I remembered that day because I'd nearly fallen asleep in the bath after taking cold medicine. Had someone held my head under? Had Emma? Me collapsed on the kitchen floor, surrounded by scattered pills. My face slack and lifeless. October 17th. The day I found my medication bottles with the lids unscrewed. Me in my car in the closed garage, smoke visible around the edges of the frame. My head slumped against the steering wheel. October 24th. I'd started my car that morning and smelled something wrong, something burning. I'd turned it off immediately and had a mechanic check it out. He'd found a problem with the exhaust system that could have been catastrophic. Me in the backyard at night, lying in the grass, something dark and indistinct standing over my prone body. October 31st, Halloween. I'd gone outside to turn off the porch light after the trick-or-treaters stopped coming, and I'd felt something watching me from the trees. I'd run back inside so fast, I'd left the porch light on all night. Each drawing was dated. Each date had already passed, and I was still alive. But as I reached the end of the portfolio, past all the failed prophecies, I found drawings with future dates. November 15th, me choking at the dinner table, my face purple and swollen, hands clawing at my throat. November 22nd, me in my bed, something pressed over my face, suffocating me. November 28th, me at the top of the stairs, falling backward, my expression captured in that split second of horrified realization. And then December 1st, me in the kitchen, standing in front of the sink with the window behind me, and in the reflection of that window, something with too many fingers reaching for my throat. Today's date was November the 30th. Tomorrow was December 1st. I should have called the police right then. I should have grabbed my keys and driven Emma back to St. Catherine's and demanded answers from Sister Margaret. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking badly enough to hold my phone, and my legs had turned to water. I knelt there on the floor of Emma's too-perfect room, surrounded by evidence that something was very, very wrong. And I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was expressing trauma through art. Maybe she'd been abused at the orphanage, and this was her way of processing violence. Maybe the dates were random. Maybe I was seeing patterns where none existed. But 37 drawings of my death, each one corresponding to a date where something almost happened. That wasn't coincidence. That was intention. My hands shook as I carefully slid the portfolio back under the bed exactly where I'd found it. I stood up on unsteady legs and turned around to leave. Emma was standing in the doorway, watching me. I have no idea how long she'd been there. "You found them," she said. Not a question. Not an accusation. Just a flat statement of fact, like she'd been expecting this moment. "Emma, we need to talk about these drawings." I tried to keep my voice steady and calm and parental. "They're very concerning. The things you're showing, they're possibilities," she interrupted, taking a step into the room. "They're possibilities. Different paths. Different endings." "What do you mean?" My voice was barely a whisper now. She walked past me to her bed and sat down, small and pale and terrifyingly calm in her school uniform. "Sister Margaret said you were the right one. She said you were the door. She tested lots of people, but most of them broke too early. You lasted. You're strong enough." "The door to what?" I was backing toward the doorway now, some primal flight instinct taking over. "To them," she said, pointing at the window with one small finger. "To the others. They've been waiting such a long time. Sister Margaret has been preparing the way for 17 years. Finding the right people, opening the right doors. You're one of the best candidates she's ever found." That's when I heard it. A sound like nothing I'd ever heard before, coming from outside Emma's window. It was rhythmic, but wrong. Like breathing, but too slow, too deep, too measured to be biological. Like something massive was inhaling and exhaling just beyond my perception, just outside the frequency my ears were designed to detect. But I could feel it in my chest, in my bones, vibrating through the floor. The windows rattled in their frames. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. Emma's face remained expressionless, but her eyes had changed. They weren't blue anymore. They were black from edge to edge, no white visible at all, reflecting nothing, absorbing all light like event horizons. "Emma, what's happening?" I tried to keep my voice steady and failed completely. "You're happening," she said in that flat, wrong voice. "You happened the moment you signed the papers, the moment you brought me home. Sister Margaret knew. She's been preparing you. All those nights you dreamed about drowning. You were drowning. Parts of you, pieces of your soul, sinking into the spaces between. Making room. Making room for what?" The thing outside exhaled again, and this time I felt it in my chest, like the air itself was being physically sucked from my lungs. "For the others," Emma said, standing up. She was taller now, impossibly taller. Her limbs were stretching like taffy, her joints bending in directions that defied every law of anatomy and physics. We needed someone who'd lost enough to feel empty, someone with enough grief inside to make space, someone who wouldn't fight too hard because part of them didn't want to live anyway. Sister Margaret has been harvesting people like you for 17 years. People with holes in them where loved ones used to be. I'm her best work, her finest door. I ran. Pure instinct took over, bypassing every rational thought, and I bolted from that room like my life depended on it. Because it did. Behind me, I could hear Emma, or the thing wearing Emma's shape, laughing. Not a child's laugh. Something ancient and cruel and delighted that echoed off the walls and seemed to come from multiple directions at once. I took the stairs 3 at a time, my phone already in my hand, fingers fumbling to unlock it, to dial 911, to do anything that might save me. The front door was 20 feet away. 15, 10, 5. The door slammed shut before I reached it, all on its own, moved by no visible hand. Every lock engaged with a series of heavy clicks that sounded like bones breaking, like joints separating. I grabbed the doorknob anyway, wrenched at it with all my strength, but it didn't budge. The wood around the frame began to warp and twist, growing over the edges like the house itself was sealing me inside. "You can't leave." Emma's voice came from everywhere at once, from above me and below me and inside the walls. "The drawings are contracts. Each one you survived bound you tighter. Each near-death experience was a signature in blood and fear. Today's drawing hasn't happened yet. December 1st hasn't happened yet. You have to see it through." I spun around, pressing my back against the door. Emma was on the ceiling now, crawling across it like a spider, her neck twisted at an impossible angle so her face looked down at me, her mouth open too wide, unhinging like a snake's jaw, and I saw row after row of teeth that looked like shattered glass. "What are you?" I screamed. "I'm a door too," she said. "We're all doors. Sister Margaret opened hers 30 years ago when her daughter died. The grief made her hollow, and they filled the space. Now she teaches others how to do the same. You adopt the children. The door's shaped like children, and you bring them into your home, and slowly they hollow you out. Most people don't survive the preparation. You're special. You lasted all the way to the final drawing." The clock on the wall struck midnight. December 1st, I heard the kitchen faucet turn on. Not water. The sound was too thick, too viscous. My nightmares came flooding back. The black water, the drowning, the fingers around my ankles. I understood now. I'd been drowning for months. Pieces of me sinking into whatever darkness these things came from. The dreams weren't warnings. They were progress reports. "Please," I whispered. "Please, I don't want this." "No one does at first," Emma said, her body contorting as she crawled down the wall. "But it gets better. Once you're empty, once they fill the space you leave behind, you'll understand. You'll be grateful." I thought about my sister then, about her last words to me. "Live," she'd said, gripping my hand. "Promise me you'll really live." I'd promised. I'd meant it. And maybe that promise was the only real thing I had left. The only part of me that hadn't been hollowed out. I closed my eyes and thought about every moment of genuine life I'd experienced. The taste of coffee on a winter morning. The sound of rain on the roof. My sister's laugh. The weight of actual love, real and painful and human. I gathered all of it, every scrap of authentic experience, and I held it inside me like a shield made of memory and meaning. When I opened my eyes, Emma was inches from my face, her breath cold and smelling like old graves. "You can't fight it," she hissed. "The drawings always come true. No, I said, and I meant it. The drawings show possibilities. You said so yourself, different paths. And I choose a different one. I remembered the earliest drawing, the one of our house. So detailed, every window in the right place, including the basement window that had been broken since before I bought the place. The one I'd been meaning to fix. The one that was still just big enough for a person to fit through if they were desperate enough. I shoved Emma with every ounce of strength I had. She stumbled backward, more from surprise than actual force, her form flickering between child and monster. I didn't wait. I ran toward the kitchen, toward the basement door, while Emma's shriek of rage shook the house's foundations. The kitchen was flooded with that black liquid from my dreams. It was ankle deep and rising, cold and thick and pulling at my legs. The thing behind me was coming, its footsteps creating ripples in the dark water. I yanked open the basement door and half fell down the stairs. The water was here too, pouring down from somewhere above, flooding the basement. The window was across the room, high on the wall, barely visible above the rising tide. I waded toward it, the liquid reaching my knees, my thighs, my waist. It burned where it touched my skin, not with heat, but with an absence of everything. Like it was erasing me one cell at a time. Behind me, something splashed into the basement. I didn't look back. The water was at my chest now. The window was above me, locked from the inside, the old metal latch rusted shut. I screamed and punched the glass. Once, twice. My knuckles split and bled. The fourth punch broke through. I grabbed the jagged edges and hauled myself up, feeling glass slice my palms, my arms, not caring. Something grabbed my ankle. Those fingers with too many joints wrapped around my leg and pulled. I kicked backward with my free foot, connected with something soft. The grip loosened for just a second. It was enough. I pulled myself through the window, my body scraping against broken glass, and fell onto the grass outside. The cold November air hit my wet clothes, and I started shaking uncontrollably. Behind me in the basement window, Emma's face appeared. But it wasn't Emma anymore. It was something wearing her face like a poorly fitted mask, and underneath I could see writhing shadows and too many eyes. "You can't run," it said. "We're in your head now. We've been there for months. You're ours." "Maybe," I gasped, "but I'm not making it easy." I ran to my car, praying I'd left the keys in the ignition. I had. The engine started, and I threw it into reverse, tires screaming. I drove to St. Catherine's Orphanage. It was 3 in the morning, the building dark and silent. I didn't care. I parked directly in front, leaned on the horn, and didn't stop until lights started coming on. Sister Margaret answered the door in her nightgown. She looked like someone's grandmother. The moment she saw me, covered in blood and that black water, her expression changed. The kindness vanished. "You survived?" she said, impressed. "No one's ever survived the final drawing before." "What did you do to me?" I demanded. "What I've done for 17 years, she said calmly. "I open doors. I help beings from the spaces between find anchors in this world. In exchange, they give me things. Knowledge, power, time. I'm 97 years old. I should have died decades ago. The children. What happens to the real children?" Sister Margaret's smile was pitying. "There are no real children. The things I bring through can wear any shape. Child shapes work best. People want to save children. They opened their homes, their hearts. You were perfect. Your sister's death left you so hollow. I'll tell everyone, I said. And say what? She asked. That monsters are real? They'll lock you up, medicate you, and while you're sedated, we'll come back. She was right. Who would believe me? I looked at this old woman and felt despair so deep it was like drowning again. Then I noticed the can of gasoline by the orphanage steps. Maintenance supplies. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones. You're right, I told her. No one would believe me. I walked back to my car, opened the trunk, and pulled out the tire iron. Her expression shifted to fear. Good. I grabbed the gasoline can and started pouring it across the orphanage steps, the porch, the door. Sister Margaret screamed for help, but we were isolated. No one was coming. You said you opened doors, I told her. Let me show you what happens when you open the wrong one. I dropped my lighter. The flames caught faster than I expected, racing across the gasoline with a hungry roar. Sister Margaret tried to run, but her body moved strangely, like the thing inside was rejecting the shape. The fire climbed the walls, and I heard sounds from inside. Screaming, chittering, sounds that no human throat could make. I stood there and watched it burn. I watched until the sun came up and the fire department arrived. They pulled 17 small bodies from the rubble. Children who had been reported as successfully adopted over the years. They questioned me for hours. I told them I'd come to confront Sister Margaret about Emma's behavior, that she'd attacked me, that in the struggle a lamp had fallen, started the fire. I showed them my injuries, my terror. I was a victim. They believed me because people want simple narratives. Emma's body was never found. Neither was anything in my house. When investigators went there, everything looked normal. But I know better. I live in hotels now, change rooms every 3 days. I don't sleep much. Can't sleep much because when I do, I dream of that black water and something waiting at the bottom. Sometimes I see children watching me from across the street. Their eyes too old, their smiles too knowing. I see old women in churches, their prayers sounding like invitations. I see the spaces between things, the cracks in reality where something else might slip through. Sister Margaret was one door opener. There are others. I've started documenting them, tracking patterns. The orphanages that close suddenly, the adoption agencies with suspicious histories, the children who never quite look right in photographs. I know what you're thinking, that I'm paranoid, that the trauma broke something in me. Maybe it did. Or maybe I'm one of the few people who survived long enough to see the truth. I saw another drawing yesterday. I was walking past a coffee shop, and through the window I saw a little girl sitting with her parents. She was sketching something. When she held it up, I saw it clearly. A charcoal drawing of a man drowning. The date in the corner was 3 weeks from now. I wanted to run in there, to warn them. But what would I say? How do you tell someone that their daughter might be a door to somewhere else? You can't. All you can do is survive another day and hope that your survival means something. The drawing Emma made for December 1st never came true. I survived it, but that doesn't mean I won. It just means the game isn't over. Somewhere out there, Sister Margaret's colleagues are still working, still placing children, still opening doors, and someday they might come back for me. But I'll be ready, because I know the truth now, and truth is a kind of armor, enough to keep fighting enough to stay alive one more day. If you've ever felt something watching you from the corner of your eye, if you've ever looked at a loved one and felt a moment of wrongness you couldn't explain, if you've ever had dreams of drowning in darkness, pay attention. Notice the patterns. Trust your instincts. And whatever you do, don't ignore the signs. Don't let grief make you vulnerable. Don't let loss hollow you out. Don't let the empty spaces inside you become doorways for something else. Because the doors are real. The things on the other side are patient. And they're always, always hungry.